welcome back to the show. Today, we're going to dig into how to build your digital presence. This is important to anyone in the business world today. As you all know, I'm certain your brand is the number one asset you can develop as an entrepreneur. Now, as you know, my name is Jerry Gaduri. I'm your host on Business Mastery for Startups, Scale-Ups, and Early Stage Businesses. All of those benefit from having a strong digital presence. Now, when we grew up, we were told and we were taught that our word is our bond and it's unbreakable and it's the number one thing that we should cultivate in people is that they understand that our word is trusted. It's really what building your digital brand is on steroids. So when it comes to building your digital brand, what do I mean by that? By that, I mean your presence, by making sure that the places where your ideal prospect and your ideal candidate reside. So for our purposes, we'll focus, as we always do, on the early stage entrepreneur startup founder who needs to consistently attract these new prospects and these new candidates, that they may one day have to hire or, of course, purchase their product and service. Let's do two different examples so we can hit this from different areas. Let's make example number one, a SaaS company building a marketing brand for its financial software so they can be in front of their ideal prospects. Let's make the second one, a startup that's building an employer brand trying to draw tech talent, to find the hidden folks that, a standard recruiter wouldn't be able to find for them. Now, they both start exactly the same way, by talking to their audience. In the example of the financial SaaS product brand that we're trying to build, we want to, number one, understand who our ideal audience is for our purposes. Let's say it's controllers and CFOs of mid-level companies, mid-market companies. Once we know who that is, we want to ensure that the brand we're building is attractive to them. We're to make sure that a person in that role would characteristically view the brand that we've built as attractive. I don't want to get into brand building too deeply on this podcast. There's about 83 bajillion wonderful books about how to build a brand. I want to focus on taking that brand to the places where your prospects and candidates will be and showing it to the most value. So the first thing we want to do once we know who that person is we want to talk to our audience. Ideally, if we already have customers or clients, we want to talk to them and ask them these questions. Where do you and people like you tend to congregate? What business platforms and social media do you consume? What associations do you belong to and value? What conferences do you typically attend to learn more about financial matters for your business vertical? What podcasts do you consume? What books do you read? What type of media do you consume? How do you consume that media? All of this information is going to tell you exactly where they are. Now, in our second example, the questions are the same. The audience is going to be different. So if we're that tech startup looking to build an employer brand so they can draw out that hard to find talent, they're going to ideally talk to people in those roles if they've already got them internally or in their professional network if they don't, and ask them the exact same questions. So Mr. or Mrs. Technologist, what business platforms are you on? What user groups do you belong to? What meetups do you go to? How is it that you get the information you need to stay fresh in your skills? Do you belong to any associations? Again, all the same questions. In both examples, we're going to boil that down to a list and prioritize that based on a couple of things. Number one, how interactive is that thing? So as a surprise to nobody, somewhere on that list most likely is going to be LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the biggest business network in the world, so it's highly probable that will be on there. If it is, and fairly certain it will be, take the extra step to learn what user groups within LinkedIn that they utilize. Why? Because it's a world of difference for posting to LinkedIn generally versus posting to a specific user group that contains the market you're trying to cultivate. Regardless of what it is, though, again, it might be an association, it might be a user group outside of LinkedIn. You can use websites like meetups.com to find local ones in your geography. But whatever it is, you want to pick one main channel where your audience resides, one main channel and one secondary channel. You don't want to try to master all the platforms at once. That's a common mistake. Know this about building an audience. Building a digital presence in an audience is all about adding value consistently over time. You know, as a startup founder and early stage executive, time is something you don't have a lot of. So trust me when I tell you that it is highly improbable you're going to have the time to do a meaningful campaign across several different platforms and venues. Pick one and a secondary. Your primary gets the majority of your attention. Your secondary gets a little bit less. For me, my primary platform is LinkedIn. I do most of my work there. My secondary platform is YouTube. This video podcast sits on YouTube. As an additional benefit, using the same amount of energy that it did to create this episode, I strip the audio out and I post it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, because just a reuse of content, which is another advantage of having a highly targeted program, because you can reutilize that content in several different ways. So again, pick a primary platform and a secondary platform. Make sure once you are active on that platform that you are consistently adding value. Keywords there were adding value and consistently. You can't do this off and on when you have time, sporadically, and expect to get a positive result. When you're in that place, share your brand and add that value. So what does that mean, add value? I've said it a bunch of times. Adding value is giving that audience the things that it came to that user group for, but getting them from you. So that might be things like sharing articles that are relevant to the topic of that user group. So in our SaaS financial group, that might be changes in financial regulations that impact that group. That might be different regulations that impact that group. That might be a YouTube video that you found that talks about financial matters, again, relevant to that group and ideally to that SaaS. That might be a case study you can share about success that you had. Now, here's a strange one. That might be pictures of a conference you went to with a question attached, like, did you go to this conference? It might be you posting a conference you're going to and asking, are you going to this conference? It might be pictures of a company get-together that you share. Why? Because in social media, people connect with people, not with companies. So when you share something like that, that's actually valuable to many of the people in there because you're personalizing your company. Those are all what we call gives. And that brings me to the next point. You want to follow this tempo. Give, 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 ask. Or as Gary Vee says, jab, 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 right hook. For our purposes, that means that you give an article, you give that YouTube video, you give that case study, and then you post something about a new feature in your SaaS. In our employer brand example, that means that you post something relevant about a change in the technology of that user group. Again, something relevant to them. You share a story about a promotion in your company of someone relevant to that user group, how they went from a software developer to a senior developer. You talk about a new technology that you added to your tech stack and the impact it had on your team. And again, you share information about conferences that you're going to. Quick sidebar here. Conferences are an incredible recruiting ground. Most technology conferences have seminars and breakout sessions within the conference that constitutes CEUs for your technologists. And for many of the certifications that those technologists hold, those CEUs are necessary to maintain them. So if you can, and it's in your budget, bring a recruiter to that conference. Anyway, back to our more LinkedIn-focused example. Once we've done that 3, 4, 5 times, now we can mention a job that we're working on because it's in context of the employer brand you're building, and it's been asked after 3+ gives. So remember that tempo, please. Give, 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 ask. Please keep in mind that this is a flywheel. You are going to add value consistently over time and build an audience. As your audience gets larger, your impact gets larger. Social media is a flywheel. You push, you push, you push, you push, you push, and it starts to turn on its own. And before you know it, it's pulling you. If you're growing your followers by 1% and you have 100 followers, that's only 1. But when you have 1,000, it's 10. When you have 1 million, it's a lot more. I will not embarrass myself by getting the math wrong. So keep that in mind. It's more powerful as you go. So now that you've been sharing your brand over time, you've gotten that give, 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 ask down, you're going to start to really see those results. Once you've started to see those results, now is the time that you're adding additional platforms. So maybe you're starting off in LinkedIn user groups. As you're growing, you're learning other user groups that are closely aligned to the one you're in, and you're starting the process there. And you're doing that again and again until you're spreading across all the relevant user groups. You're sharing the same content in general. You're sharing the same content across all of the user groups that are relevant for it. And you're doing it from both your company page and the individual contributors that are responsible. Now, in our 2 examples, with the SaaS financial product, that's probably going to be marketing and salespeople predominantly. In our employer brand, it's probably going to be recruiters or hiring managers that are still hiring on their own roles. In both circumstances, please keep this additional tip in mind. In LinkedIn or in any of these social business platform networking sites, when someone first connects with you or you first connect with them, if you immediately reach out with an ask, that's called pitch slapping, and it's heavily frowned on. It's a quick path to damaging your credibility. So don't do that. Add value. In that first contact, ask how you can help them. Say something like, "Thank you for accepting my connection. If I can introduce you to anyone or help you in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out." Make a note in your ATS in the case of the employer brand, or your CRM in the case of the sales and marketing brand. In a couple of days, reach out again and offer them something. That something, mind you, again, isn't a job ad or marketing material. It's something of value. When you're on these sites, also keep in mind that engagement is a two-way street. I've referred to posting predominantly, but engaging with other people's content is how you build that audience as well. So thought leaders in that space, people with large audiences, comment on their posts with meaningful, thoughtful comments and questions, and don't be surprised when they reach back out and comment on your comment in a reply. Get a conversation going, and don't ask anything the first time. Again, give, 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 ask. And as you master this platform and start to get results, now is the time to look at adding secondary, third, and fourth platforms to your quiver. But don't do it until you start to get results, because this is a bit of a long game and a bit of a time investment. So you want to make sure you're getting the most from it that you can. Now, I talk about this in my book, Destination Employer, as it relates to employer brands. And I talk about it on the YouTube channel as well in several different videos. So if this topic is important to you, please check out my book on Amazon or check out the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is under my name, Jerry Gadori. If you want to communicate with me directly, I am, as I mentioned earlier, very active on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to connect with you there and answer any questions. That's all I've got for today's episode. Between now and next week, make sure you go out there and do something awesome. Build something great. And share this message. The more people that I can reach out and help, the more things I can offer to the audience. So if you're on YouTube, please like, comment, and share. If you're on Spotify or one of the audio-only platforms, then please give it a subscribe and leave a review. Regardless, have a wonderful time, and thank you again for sharing that time that you have with me. Build something great.